Hi, good morning, and welcome to the ZP webinar on FoodSense. So we do this every week, and it's part of our commitment to supporting the product, and means that we use this opportunity to answer questions that have come in during the week. My apologies, I'm in a hotel this week, so the audio, cameras, etc. are not quite so good, but let's go forward anyway. So don't forget, we do our live demos every month. There's a weekly webinar, there's a live demo, but I'll touch upon this again anyway. I suppose it's probably worth me saying that in the live demos, we definitely do essentially live demos where we do at least 2 samples. The next live demo is on the 26th of October. And we do a live demo once in the morning and once in the afternoon. When I say afternoon, I kind of mean our time. When I say our time, I sort of mean the time zone in Europe. But we do one in the morning, one in the afternoon, because that way then we overlap quite nicely with Asia when we do it in the morning, and in the afternoon we quite nicely overlap with USA, and we in particular we're thinking about California because our kind of 4 p.m. is people's kind of 8 p.m. Anyway, that said, these are a couple of webinars that we did on the 26th of September, and there will be some more webinars on the 26th of October, but that will come up anyway. The following questions are discussed in the patterns anyway, but I don't expect people to read the patterns, but I will address the questions that have come up this week. And one of the questions is, a couple of questions. What's the range of the meter? And are the sensors reusable? So I can give a short answer, and then I'll give a more in-depth answer then as well. So the short answer is we've measured up to about 1 million Scoville heat units. It's just as far as we've really gone with this, because I think in most practical cases, we really get involved with people who are really making products, as opposed to kind of just interested in the heat for the sake of the heat. So 1 million Scoville heat units seems to be enough. And the next part of the question, which is in the scientific literature as well, is that you can't reuse the sensors, and I will talk about that in a minute. I think the short answer at the moment is because the capsaicin is quite a organic molecule, and it likes to stick to the sensors. So if you make a measurement with it with a sensor, you'll get a sort of heat and a hotness. So for example, you measure something, it's 5,000 Scoville heat units. You take the sample off, you rinse the sensor, you use it again, you measure the same sample, you'll get 6,000 Scoville heat units. If you do it again, you'll maybe get 7,000 Scoville heat units. The capsaicin is sticking to the sensor, and so the sensor is picking up a history from the previous sample. So the way we solve this is we do a measurement, and then unfortunately the sensor is discarded. There's nothing we can do about it. The reason I say that is because this is a chemical bond between the capsaicin and the sensor, and you're not going to break it by just sort of simple washing. And then if you use organic solvents, you're going to end up damaging the sensor itself. So it's sort of, I would describe it as irreversibly bound, is how I would describe it. Anyway, I can dig into that a second time round in the questions anyway. So when we talked about the quantification of heat, the first question was really about what's the maximum hotness we can measure, which I said is about 1 million. That's what we've got up to. It's not our maximum, but I will describe this a little bit. That obviously you've got 4 ways of being able to detect the hotness of something. People use HPLC and more, and to be frank, I think we're probably selling more food sensors for this application than they are selling HPLCs for it. It's simply a cost perspective, a cost thing. You can sort of buy 10 or more food sensors for the cost of one HPLC system. Bringing this webinar back to the question. The question is asking, what's our sort of maximum range? And I said, look, we've got up to 1 million Scoville heat units. So let me just describe what's happening with this product. So if you take a chili powder or a source of capsaicin, and you dissolve it, let me just pull myself out of the way. and you dissolve a very small amount, you can make up a solution of, let's say, 160 Scoville heat units. This is very mild, by the way. And when you measure it, you'll get 160 Scoville heat units. Then you'll make up a solution of, let's say, 320 Scoville heat units, again very mild, and you measure it and you'll get 320 Scoville heat units. Then you do it again, and let's say 480 Scoville heat units. You won't quite get 480 Scoville heat units when you measure it. If you make up 640, though you think you've made up 640, when you measure it, you actually find out that it's 480, or not 480, but approximately this. And if you keep on increasing concentrations of Scoville heat units, in fact, when you measure it, it's less than. Now, what's happening here, this is relevant to the question, but I'm just sort of giving you a background. What this tells you is that you have solubility at low capsaicin concentrations, but actually it saturates at these higher concentrations. Now, the reason that people are able to make products with hotness, or the fruit itself is hotter than this, is because the capsaicin is kind of bound up in oils and fats, and these help to solubilize it. But if you just try to solubilize capsaicin in a aqueous solution, it soon saturates. So capsaicin is an organic molecule which is not terribly soluble just in water. This is relevant to the question, in that case, how do we measure 1 million Scoville heat units, or how do we measure 500,000 Scoville heat units, or how do we measure 50,000 Scoville heat units, or how do we measure 5,000 Scoville heat units? So I will address that now, but it's just to say that intrinsically capsaicin is not terribly soluble in liquids, and it's the fats and the oils that you add that actually help you to solubilize the capsaicin. So we kind of have this heat versus volume procedure that we do. So we'll do some demos on the 26th of October, so it's probably worth watching those demos. But if we think, we would ask you, what do you think the hotness of it is? And if you said to us, I think the hotness of this is about 5,000 Scoville heat units, then we would say, okay, take that sample and dilute it by 1 in 10. So we would take the sample, like 0.1 milliliter, and add 0.9 milliliters, and that's a 1 in 10 dilution. If we ask you the same question, let's say it's a chili powder, we would say, what do you think the hotness is? And you may say, it's 50,000 Scoville heat units. And we would say, okay, dissolve it 1 in 100, so that we can. The reason we're doing this is because we then know that we're below the saturation point. So we can't accurately measure your measurement unless we sort of mentally calculate that we're below your saturation point. If you told us that it's 500,000 Scoville heat units, then we would say it's 1 in 1,000 dilution. So you can see what this means is that actually all the time we're always sort of diluting the sample and bringing ourselves into that kind of linear range where we can dissolve the capsaicin. So you can understand that if somebody said to me, I've got a 60 million, by the way, is the Scoville heat unit of pure capsaicin. So you're never going to ask us to do 60 million, but we would essentially be able to do it because we would actually do this this dilution. I am going to talk about the way the hardware works, and the reason I'm able to do that is it's really included in the patents. So what's going on? When I say what's going on, so for example, you've got a sample. It's 4,800 Scoville heat units. We would say, okay, take 0.1 milliliters of that, add it to 0.9 milliliters of the buffer, and therefore we've mentally calculated that we're not exceeding, let's say, approximately 500 Scoville heat units. We measure the sample, and in fact the sample is measured at 480 Scoville units, but the app, the FoodSense app, when you were using it, you told it that you did a 1 in 10 dilution, so it back calculates and says actually the hotness of your product is 4,800 Scoville heat units. Let's say it's a different scenario with something like a chili powder, and you said, I think it's about 50,000 Scoville heat units. In fact, it's 48,000 Scoville heat units, rather. I'm just making sure I got that right. So we ask you, what do you think the hotness is? You think, it's about 50,000 Scoville heat units. If you don't know, by the way, don't worry. And we go, okay, let's do but in fact, in reality, you don't really know, but it's 48,000 Scoville heat units. Okay, no probs. We take a sample of that, we dilute it, and we dilute it by a dilution factor of 1 in 100. So we therefore haven't exceeded this approximate 500 Scoville heat units. Everything's good. We measure the sample. The samples are known to us. The instrument actually initially gets a result of 480 Scoville heat units, because that's what the 48,000 divided by 100 gives you. And the app then recalculates back what the original concentration was and reports 48,000 Scoville heat units. So you can see that this question about what's the maximum you can measure is not it's not relevant to the way the instrument actually works. And the reason the instrument works this way is because of this fundamental insolubility of capsaicin in buffers. Now, our buffer C is, I never want you to do this, but if you splash this buffer on your hands or you accidentally ingested this buffer, it's not toxic. It's important. So, it's very kind of water-based. And this is important because we want to protect you, and we also want to protect the foods that this buffer, for whatever reason, if it came into it, people would be okay. Now, with regards to reuse of the sensor, I have said that the sensor is not reusable. This is Professor Richard Compton. He's at, I think, St John's College, the University of Oxford. The bit of Oxford I know, of course I know, but I know him. But St John's College, I think, is where he's actually at, in Oxford, UK, so the University of Oxford. And this is the molecule capsaicin. So if you read the patents, we're measuring the capsaicin using an electrochemical technique called voltammetry. This, if you haven't seen one of our webinars or not attended one of our live webinars, 26th of October, we'll talk about this a bit more. But this molecule capsaicin, when we put it onto the sensor, the molecule is what I would describe as an organic molecule. It's got an aromatic ring on it. It's got this long carbon chain along here. It's got carbons here. So this molecule loves to stick to other carbon surfaces. So in fact, what happens is this molecule ends up sticking to our sensor irreversibly, and that's why we can't actually reuse the sensor. So that's the kind of answer to that question. Now, if you do have any technical questions for ZP, we do have the FoodSense technology.com website, and there is a contact us button on that. And don't forget, we do have our webinars on the 26th of October. We hold two, one in our morning and one in our evening. And if you come to if you're in Asia or Europe, the one in the morning works, but if you're in Europe, the one in the afternoon also works. But if you're in sort of South North America, then I would recommend the one in the afternoon. Any links, by the way, I'll put them on the YouTube channel. This video is embedded on the YouTube channel. Click the video, it'll bring you to the YouTube channel, and I'll put all the links underneath there so you can find these events. So I think that brings me to thank you, and including this link, I'll also put this underneath the video as well on the YouTube channel as well. Okay, if you've got any questions, don't hesitate to contact us. Okay, thanks very much.